What the Tech is brought to you by ButcherBox. For $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free ground beef in every box for the life of your subscription, go to butcherbox.com/Andrew and enter Andrew at checkout. And for people who already have a subscription to ButcherBox, you'll have a special deal on ground beef you can take advantage of by logging into your account. TextExpander helps you communicate smarter. Visit textexpander.com/podcast for 20% off your first year.
What's the tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarin. Of course, I'm joined by Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Better than you by the experience of the past 10 minutes.
Hold on. I didn't shut the door. And I'm leaving. Here, look, I'm leaving. Yeah, well, it's been a hectic day, to say the least. I'm glad that you're here because I did not do a show with you last week. I did a show on my own with Suncast, and I heard it was very good.
That's
from
Suncast.
people. People really enjoyed it. Yeah,
he's going to think he's
Yeah, do you know why I ended up doing it with Suncast? John Prosser's missing. I'm a little concerned.
You know why? Because of that notch bullshit. I'm sorry.
I think they got him. I think the Google police found him. Of which, and
can I just quickly apologize? When you said last time we spoke, which might have been 2 weeks ago, the last time we recorded the podcast, you were saying that John Prosser had written about this conspiracy theory thing. And I said something to the effect of, other people are writing about it as well, or we're talking about it. I didn't realize at that time, this is kind of embarrassing, the video I had watched was John Prosser. So I was sort of thinking in the back of my head, like, this other guy was kind of really all over this, but actually we were talking about the same person.
It was John, So, and then now he's missing. He hasn't responded to any of my phone calls. He said he was doing the show, and then he just went, he went missing, MIA. So he might be either dead. He got notched. He's been notched. But there is a lot to talk about because there's more rumors now, more leaks coming out of the Google side. There's a Microsoft event that you're coming to on Tuesday. We have that going on.
The Microsoft event is on. Let me look, because actually I'm losing my mind. The Microsoft event actually is on Tuesday. Excuse me. I'll be there Monday for something else, and then I'll be there Monday night, and then I'll be there Tuesday for the Microsoft.
And obviously, there's a Samsung Galaxy announcement that's coming out too. And it's 4 times the fun if you saw the invite. 4 times the fun. So all that also, and a whole lot more, obviously.
LG's
and also LG, which which I'm very interested about. But before we continue, I want to thank our great sponsor, and that's ButcherBox. They have a great offer for you guys for this month. You get $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free ground beef in every box for the life of your subscription. Now, I have a ButcherBox subscription, obviously, and every month I get the box sent to my house because I've been barbecuing all the time because I have no kitchen still, and this has been the best thing in the world. So I just get a box of meat and I just put it in the freezer and I grill every day when I get home. It's absolutely a lifesaver. Actually, it's been making my life a whole lot easier. And the cool thing about how ButcherBox works is that you get to curate the box, right? So you can mix and match depending on what you want. If you want high quality beef or chicken or pork, or you could customize everything depending on what your favorites are. The meat is frozen to peak freshness in individual vacuum packed bags. They arrive to your house, and this is the coolest part. So they carefully calculate the dry ice to ensure it remains frozen once it arrives to your doorstep. So you don't have to worry whether you're in Phoenix or in New York. They calculate it based on your region with the temperatures, so this thing doesn't melt within minutes. So it's absolutely great. I absolutely love it. The beef is grass-fed, grass-finished beef, free-range organic chicken. It's absolutely great, and no hormones, no antibiotics. All this stuff is super fresh and very healthy. They're not pumping this thing with hormones to make it look like an Arnold Schwarzenegger of cows or chicken. Really great guys. I love the company. And I think you just pictured what I just said, Paul. You just pictured an Arnold Schwarzenegger type chicken roaming around.
I admit it.
At one of those other guys. You get $20 off your first box and 2 pounds of free ground beef in every box for the life of your subscription. All you got to do is go to butcherbox.com and use the offer code. Let's see. I'm sorry. I just lost my offer code here. That's bizarre. Butcherbox.com/Andrew, and you could enter Andrew at checkout. I want to thank ButcherBox for supporting the show. Where do you want to begin? Do you want to start with the Microsoft stuff? Because you just came from Ignite.
Mm-hmm.
How did that go?
Oh boy, that's a leading question. It went well. These trips. I don't know if I'm just getting older or whatever it is, but I find these trips to be very tiring. But of course, in this case, it was back to back to back to back. We had it was only 2 days, although I was there a third day with Brad and his family going to SeaWorld, which was tiring in a different way. But it was 3 long days of back to back stuff, and we recorded 3 podcasts from the show. Brad and I did 2, and then we did Windows Weekly there. We had a meetup, which was great. My company had a party, which was good too. And it started for me at 2:50 a.m. on Sunday, and I went to bed probably at midnight on Tuesday night and got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to fly home. So it was kind of one of those kind of things. But yeah, Ignite is an amazing show. I mean, I think a lot of what happens at Ignite wouldn't potentially be of interest to this audience in the sense that it's enterprise and IT and cloud computing kind of stuff. But I do think there were some interesting tidbits for normal people.
I guess, but on the Microsoft side, right, you could kind of see what their path is. If you go to these events every year, you could kind of see like how it impacts all areas of business for Microsoft.
Yeah.
Obviously they're going more cloud-based with a lot of the services that they're offering. I was talking to a friend of mine about Office, and he made a great observation. This is coming from someone that uses Outlook every day and Word every day and Excel every day, but he's not a power user. And he says, what I love? The fact that it's brand new every time. I don't ever have to buy Office. It's just a new version. Like on the Mac, for example, the new version got pushed out.
Well, it's even more amazing than that, right? The Mac is updated once a year like iOS is in a major way. I know there are minor updates as well. Windows is updated twice a year. Office is updated at a functional level, meaning with new features, once a month. And that spans the desktop applications for PC and Mac, the mobile applications for Android and iOS, the web applications, obviously on the web that work everywhere, the back-end services, and what we used to call like servers, essentially. Every one of these things is upgraded every single month. And if that's not fast enough for you, you can join the Insider program. There's an Office Insider program. You can configure your apps to get the Office Insider version of those things, and it will happen even more quickly. Or you'll get features earlier. It's really kind of amazing. And maybe even more amazing is that it works. On the Windows side, we're kind of arguing that maybe this is too fast. On the Office side, it seems like it's working well.
It's consistent. So, I mean, this is obviously a new way of doing it. By the way, on the Mac side, I just upgraded to Mojave, right? I mean, the beta's been out. If you've been a beta tester for a while, you've been using it. But I just updated to Mojave. And, I think this is a far more significant upgrade than people imagined it was. Or knew that it was.
What's big? Tell me what's big for you.
So the file management in the Finder, the Explorer, I guess their Explorer, it's a little bit better. They've kind of fixed some of those issues that existed. I really like the dark mode.
I do too. I use it exclusively.
I really
in fact,
Yeah,
my experience with dark mode on Mojave has caused me to use dark mode in Windows now. And the truth is, I had kind of looked at it in the past. There was a dark mode in the previous version of Windows. There's an improved dark mode in the version that's coming out this coming month that basically just styles more things dark, like File Explorer and so forth. It's really not anywhere as good as the one on the Mac. But I am so used to that look now that I kind of want it everywhere I am. And I actually really prefer it.
Yeah, like the organization of the desktop, how it kind of stacks the stuff. I mean, these are little things, but the cool part is I really like the new screenshots ability where you can kind of, that made
like
that
iOS.
a little bit more in tune.
Yep.
and a screen recorder.
Yeah.
It has its own the screen recorder now built in, which
Mhm.
you listen for demo purposes, things like that. It's really important for me.
Yeah.
The voice memo app for recording stuff. So a lot of the features that I've been using, obviously other applications for, they've done a good job at integrating it and just feels a more complete and matured operating system. I mean, for the
Yeah. Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
last couple of years, they've kind of gotten stagnant and with their upgrades. This
Yep.
felt a way bigger improvement. But the biggest thing here for me was we got to see, and we're getting a little preview on what the next version of macOS is going to be. And that's going to be
Yes.
a major, significant upgrade because you're going to have iOS apps on here. The
Yeah.
news app, for example, right? I'm looking at the news app
Yep.
here. Uh, it is a perfect example of what these applications will look like.
Right. Now, it's baby steps at this point. I actually have the news app pinned to my dock in macOS 10. I like it a lot. It doesn't support any kind of typical macOS navigation features. There's no keyboard controls that I've ever found for going back or whatever. That will come. And this is just I think it was 3 apps they took from iOS or from the iPad essentially. That stocks and I think the home app, and it just kind of gives you a feeling of what that's going to be like. And you're right. I think the next version of macOS, when third-party developers are invited, is going to make a big difference. Plus the things they learn just from using these apps on the Mac. At some point, you have to make a little more concession to the fact that people have a trackpad and a keyboard, and how can we accommodate the things that people on a Mac are used to versus what people are used to on a mobile device. But yeah, that's
Well, to
big.
me, this is, I know that they've said in the past that they're not looking at doing, the Mac OS doesn't work well with touchscreen and they've tried it to have touch features. I think this is the first dive into having a touch-based Mac.
Yeah. So, by the way, I was just thinking about this. The Apple antagonism toward touchscreens on Mac never made any sense to me. But it just occurred to me because think about this, on an iPad Pro, where you're using their smart keyboard, which is basically like a keyboard cover that kind of origamis around, you can type on the keyboard, and that's neat. But when you need to do anything, you have to raise your finger up and touch the screen. If you want, there are times when you still have to do this because they don't put a trackpad on it. So ironically, the thing that is unacceptable on a Mac, which is a user reaching toward the screen, perfectly acceptable on an iPad. And I don't understand that. To me, the Mac will always be what it is. It's what Windows is. It's a desktop operating system. It's primarily mouse or pointing control, whatever it is, and keyboard. Yes. But touch is one of those things. We've learned this over the years. When you have it, you'll use it in these situations. The iPad as a productivity tool is too screen focused with too touch focused. The Mac is not touch focused enough. I mean, there's a happy medium here, right?
Yeah.
You could add a trackpad type thing to an iPad Pro. Most users would probably not use it most of the time, but when it is there, it would be wonderful for the millions of people who are weaned on traditional productivity focused PCs. And on the reverse, yeah, most people use a Mac probably wouldn't use touch. Doesn't hurt anything, and for the people who do need it or would want it, it's wonderful to have.
Yeah, so I mean, this is obviously the evolutionary steps that we're seeing. I mean, we see it on the Windows side, and listen, I was one of these people that did not really care for a touchscreen Windows laptop, and now, once you have it, my HP is touchscreen. I tend to use that a lot. I tend to touch around my Surface, for example. We have a bunch of Surfaces in my office, and I always end up using the touchscreen when I was one of these people that was kicking and screaming that I didn't want a touchscreen laptop. So I obviously this is the next step on the Apple side, but this is the next couple of years we're talking. We're not talking next year. We're talking 3 years, 4 years, maybe 5 years down the line when everything is kind of working out for them in this new iOS centric Mac OS. That's when they'll take the lead.
And the processor change that everyone sort of expects. Should that happen on the low end Macs, they go to their own A series chips, which are ARM based. If they and my iPhone just turned on because she was excited. No, please don't talk. Maybe that makes more sense in that time frame.
Yeah. So I like this operating system. I've had it for a couple of days now. I mean, obviously I was using a beta, but It feels a lot more polished than previous releases. You know what I do like? Have you used the dynamic desktop?
No, is this the thing where it automatically stacks?
Yeah, no, no, no,
Separated?
no, no.
Oh, you
So
mean
the
the
desktop
background?
backgrounds. Yeah,
Yeah. No, you know what?
yeah.
I leave it in dark mode and I leave the dark wallpaper on. I like the look, and I did play with that for a while. I think it's cool. Yeah, brother.
He finds it
Sorry,
cool too. Yeah,
my dog is
yeah.
going insane for some reason.
It's all right. It's all right.
It really
So,
isn't.
yeah. So, I mean, that was. There's not too much more. Obviously, we'll talk more in detail on later on when I tend to use this thing a little bit more and I find more features that I absolutely love. But nice upgrade. People with Macs are going to be happy, and people who have Macs
Yep.
don't give a crap. So that's how it is. I want to talk
Yep.
about. So let's take a moment. I want to talk about the Samsung event coming up in the next couple weeks and the
Okay.
LG event that's coming up.
Mhm.
Are we going a little crazy with the amount of cameras they're putting on these phones now? I mean, this is the new notch.
Well,
This is the notch of 2019. 5 cameras, 4 cameras.
well, dual cameras started before we had notches, right? I think the iPhone 7 Plus had a dual camera system, but no notch. I don't know, but yeah, there is an escalation occurring here for sure. Unless you Google, apparently, right? So Google is the one and one of the best cameras in smartphones, a single lens camera. But yeah, we've seen dual, triple, and what's the rumor on the LG 4, 5, 5 lenses?
5 cameras.
Nokia
Yeah.
is
So
rumored
I'm
to have such a
curious.
device.
So the 5 lenses are going to be the regular lens, a super widescreen lens,
Hmm.
the dynamic, I guess their portrait mode lens. I don't know what the other
Hmm.
2 would be for. And then the front facing camera, obviously a front face. So it actually has
Sure.
6.
Yeah, it might have 2 cameras on the front.
Oh,
I
2
don't
on the
remember
front,
though.
3 on the back. Yeah. So okay. So a
I'll deal with this
widescreen
when I
and a
get to it.
regular
There's so
one.
much stuff coming. It's kind of hard to even keep focused
That's
on stuff.
wild.
But
That's wild.
it is a little strange. I mean, I think this is an area where companies feel like they can make a difference, and it's fair to say in the flagship smartphone world, number one consideration for customers right now is camera quality.
Yeah.
All the major camera phone makers, Apple, Samsung, and then Google, which is not a major smartphone provider, but they do make the platform, see the importance of this, and they ensure that their devices have really good cameras. Huawei's working on this stuff too, of course, and then kind of the mid-tier players, all of them, LG, HTC, OnePlus, whoever. Camera quality is a big deal.
Yeah, but it's fascinating because the iPhone, the new iPhone, the results are beautiful. Did you see the comparison between the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 10s?
The comparison,
Yeah,
like I
the
assume there have been many of them.
no,
I
I
bought.
sent you one. That's why. No, I
Oh, I'm
sent you
sorry.
one.
I don't remember
Yeah.
which one you sent me, but
So there was a comparison the 9 to 5 Mac did, and I thought it was a pretty good comparison because they played it in different scenarios. There is an improvement for sure between the
there's an
two.
improvement over the predecessor for sure.
Yeah.
It's not better than the Pixel 2 XL, which is a problem. Um, it's excellent. I mean, I think I would say I have not tried a Note 9, but compared to the S9 Plus, I think this has an edge. There is pardon the pun, I guess. There's a thing that Samsung does in low light that I don't personally approve of, where they kind of overly light the scene because it's dark and you try to light it up so it looks normal. And a lot of people would probably like that. It's like having a flash without the annoying flash actually going off. I don't like that. Apple kind of hits right down the middle between the effect you get on a Google Pixel 2 or 2 XL and what the Samsung does. And so there is some lightening of the scene typically. If you focus on a really bright element in the scene, sometimes it can do a bit of that low light effect that I like, which is it keeps it low light, but the lights kind of pump up a bit and it's got a really neat kind of thing. You kind of imagine those street scenes where it's like neon outside. It's really nice and crisp, but the rest of the scene's really dark. Or the light from a light post hits the ground and you get that halo effect on the ground and it's nice and pronounced and beautiful looking. Not like unnatural looking or artifacty or noisy, but just high quality. Apple's, they're getting there. They didn't talk a lot about low light at the event, and that worried me. And they also talked kind of vaguely about the pixels were bigger and pixels were also deeper, because apparently pixels are 3D now. And they didn't really say by how much, you know. And so I don't remember. I've looked at so many comparisons, and I've made my own comparisons too now. I don't remember specifically which one was what. Depending on it, the more Apple-oriented sites tend to think this is the greatest camera in the world. The sites that test different kinds of cameras, like CNET, I remember did Pixel 2 compared to the iPhone XS, and the Pixel 2 does better. There's just no way around it. It's still better. And that's kind of interesting because in I don't know, what, a week, 10 days, whatever, 2 weeks from now, Google will be announcing a new phone. Right now, this is not a 5.27 whatever lens thing. It's supposedly just a single lens camera again, which is amazing. So we'll see what they can do.
So did you read about the Beautygate stuff with the iPhone?
No, I've not even heard this term.
So some people are complaining, or they're reporting that the front-facing camera on the new iPhones produces that does a selfie, does like a skin smoothing filter on them.
Oh, I could use that. Will it remove the bags from under my eyes?
Unlike the like Android devices that have that, the calibration appears to soften, brighten, as well as add a touch of pinkness to your skin.
Oh boy. Does it make your eyes bigger so you look like one of those Japanese anime characters?
But here's the thing. There's no setting. There's no like beauty mode off. Yeah. So it just makes everybody a little bit prettier.
So, it's funny. This is a problem I have with iOS, having used it again. I mean, I use the iPad every day, but I just use it for specific things, reading and watching movies, right? But using it as a phone, you get reoriented into this weird world, the way they do things. In most iOS apps, and certainly in the Apple apps, there's no settings in the app, right? There's no little gear somewhere where you click and like, here are the camera settings or whatever. You have to go into settings, and then you go find the app in the list. And I did that with the camera app. I was looking, I'm like, there must be a way to turn HDR and just have it be on all the time. No, there isn't. Apple, they want to think through that stuff for you. If this scene needs HDR, they're going to turn it on. If it needs smart HDR, they're going to turn it on. And the thing you're saying is basically like, they're like, oh God, look at that face. We got to fix that. I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing to assume. I mean, there is certainly a class of people that would want this. There's going to be a class of people that doesn't. And I know that, yes, there are professional camera apps. You can choose apps or whatever. But, most people use the built-in stuff. It's kind of a strange condition they have.
It is interesting how they dictate.
They know better.
You. Yeah,
they know better. They know.
Listen, it's worked so far. It's worked so far for them. So, what do we know from this Samsung event, Paul? Anything coming out about this? Because the only thing
we know anything about it, right? What was you read the tagline earlier? Say the tagline again. You had said
4 times the fun.
4 times the fun. So, had I not heard that, I would have said that my guess was that this event is going to be about that folding device that they were rumored to make. And by the way, maybe that still means maybe that's it. But now I'm wondering if this isn't referring to a 4-lens camera type thing. But they've never done something like this. So what's the deal?
Well,
I mean, look,
here's the thing.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I find it bizarre that there have been no leaks about this in 2 weeks. Very little information. And that is
kind of
rare,
unprecedented.
Especially,
yep.
Yeah, it's really rare. So either it means that people don't care, which I don't think is the case, or it means that Samsung has been very secretive about this device, whatever they're about to unveil, or it's going to be a nothing event where they're just going to profile mid-range devices.
Why on earth would you announce a major event? I don't know. They've never done an event on the schedule, to my knowledge, where you have flagships that come in the spring with the S series, and then a flagship that comes in August with the Note. That's what they've been doing for years.
But I just bought a flag. I just bought the S9 Plus.
Well, I mean, so for example, consider this, right? So there's a little company called OnePlus, and they're huge in the kind of Android enthusiast community. They've got a whole thing around them, and there are really good reasons to love this company for sure. One of the things they've started doing over the past couple of years is they release 2 flagships a year. So they're on like a 6-month schedule instead of a 12-month schedule. And this isn't like Samsung where they release one in the spring and then they add one in the fall. They release one in the spring and then they replace it in the fall. So last year they had the 5 and then the 5T. This year they released the 6 and then they're going to have the 6T. Now, there's some angst with that because, if they're going to come out with another one, I mean, why not just wait for the revision, right? It usually will be better in whatever way. It's kind of like Apple's S series devices, S year devices, but they happen every 6 months. I mean, Samsung can't do this. Samsung is the world's biggest smartphone maker, right? They have probably 117 different Android models. I don't think that they can't. And by the way, their flagships lately, although they are excellent phones, I don't believe sell in any way anywhere close to Apple's flagships. Like, I don't think it's even close.
No, in fact, they've had. By the way, we don't get those numbers, right? We don't see what the comparison.
No,
is.
We never will. I mean, both companies, there's reason to hide that, but I think we all suspect that Samsung's high-end phones, the S series and the Notes, do not sell in the same numbers as Apple's. But whatever, it's okay. I just don't think the world is ready for it. I mean, I don't even understand this. Like, how could there be 3 flagship class events and device types from this company in 1 year? Yeah. Apple announces all of their iPhones at one time. I mean, I realized it was an SE that was kind of an outlier, but actually, aside from that, I don't believe there's an exception to this. They release all their iPhones at the same time.
So
I don't know.
I don't know what this device. The other thing I was reading is that maybe they're going to, if it is, they did announce a 3-camera phone last week. It's their mid-range line, the Samsung.
Oh, but this is on a
Samsung
mid-range,
Galaxy A9 or whatever.
Right, but they announced it. There was no event for it, right? This was just here's another device.
Yeah. So, another rumor was that, a couple of years ago, they actually had they had a phone that actually was a camera. Like it had an optical zoom and everything. Mm-hmm. So maybe maybe that's going to be something too. Maybe they're going to have 4 phones under the Galaxy lineup that feature cameras. It looks like the 4X to me means that it's a camera. Maybe 4X optical zoom.
Right. I agree with you. That's what it sounds like. Other companies have tried the phone as, based on a smartphone thing, right? There's also these kind of hybrid devices, like there are those Moto phones where you can clip on peripherals that kind of attach to it using a common, whatever the connector is called.
Yeah.
And I don't believe any of these have done very well. There was that Nokia device, the PureView, that came out before the Lumias. It was kind of a Symbian or whatever based.
What's interesting, especially with the modular thing that Samsung was, Motorola was doing. If that device had come out maybe 2 years prior, when people were talking about modular aspects of phones, it would have been a very different story. But I think because you got to put an R&D and figure it out, it takes a while.
I still think it's a good idea. The funny thing about those phones, and I think it's like the X series, like Moto X, and those things are called Moto Mods, but whatever that phone is, maybe it's a Z series, whatever it is, when you don't have a mod attached to it, that's actually a really thin and light phone. It's kind of cool. Like, it's weirdly thin. And I could see that being attractive to people. I think those phones are pretty great. I think the idea is great. Google was working on a modular platform for smartphones, which they gave up on, by the way. But they don't seem to sell very well. And I think the problem is a problem we see a lot in the smartphone industry, which is you really don't see Moto having carrier deals a lot.
Yeah.
And this phone in particular, I don't remember the exact deal, but in the United States, I suspect you could only find it at one carrier, maybe. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't feel like they have a really good distribution plan. Selling it off your website doesn't work. Just ask Google.
Listen, but isn't that amazing that Google, that's their model?
I know. Well, they want to do the partner thing, and there are, they do partner with Verizon, for example, in the United States. I'm sure there'll be more of that. Huawei. OnePlus is about to have their first major U.S. launch carrier partner with the new phone when it comes out the fall. I think it's T-Mobile, if I remember correctly. That's key. T-Mobile is maybe an interesting example. They may not be a big deal per se in the United States compared to AT&T or Verizon, but it's possible that just that addition will add some, not exponential, but some giant jump in sales, just because I think that kind of thing is pretty lucrative.
Yeah.
From a number, from a unit sales perspective.
I want to continue this discussion, but before we continue, I want to thank our great sponsor, and that's Text Expander. What does Text Expander do? I'll tell you what. It helps you with communicating smarter. So what does that mean? So I'll give you an example. You can create snippets for things like that you copy and paste all the time, like email addresses, web addresses, today's date, directions, reference requests. So what I do normally is right before the show, I tweet out that we're going live. So I'll write, what the tech is going live at 1 p.m. with Andrew, Aaron, and Paul Thurrott. Instead of doing that, I have a shortcut that I put in, and I just put in WTT, and it fills it out for me. So I never have to fill that whole thing out again. It's a great way to make your life a lot easier, especially if you're constantly copying and pasting emails or constantly having to post the same thing. I do a weekly email that I have to send out, and it's long, and I have to constantly put it in and then modify it little by little. So now instead of just copy and pasting the whole thing, I just do my shortcut, and I have it set to the specific day that I'm sending it out. This is great, and it'll help you spread information quicker amongst your entire team, amongst what you're doing. And here's a great offer. Go to textexpander.com/podcast. You get 20% off your first year of service. That's textexpander.com/podcast. You get 20% off your first year of service. I want to thank Text Expander for supporting the show. So we covered the LG stuff, the Samsung stuff, the Google stuff. So do you think this device is going to have a notch or no, Paul, the Pixel 3?
So we talked about this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. As someone who is kind of invested in this thing, I have to say, I hope that it does not have a notch. That would be amazing. I will say, in using the iPhone XS for the past week, I find the notch to be very annoying. It's much bigger than the notch on the OnePlus 6. Mm-hmm. And I like phones like the current Pixel 2 XL, the Samsung flagships like the S9, 9 Plus, and the Note 9, where they just have a small bezel on it. There's nothing wrong with that design. I don't understand the need for the notch. I find Apple's to be objectionable. The Google one, if it's real, the Pixel 3 XL, if all those leaks are real, this will be by far the most ugly and humongous notch in the history of notches. And I am not sure if I can deal with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know which.
I don't know.
I want to believe that it's not real, but if it is, I'm going to have a decision to make.
What's interesting is that people actually want the notch because they like the aesthetics of the notch now because Apple has it. I mean, there are people, I mean, I've been seeing the argument on Twitter where people want it to have a notch and they think the notch is great. They're into the look of the notch, but I don't know why.
This is mass delusion. Nobody, I want to have part of the screen occluded by a black opaque thing. I want to be watching a movie full screen, which I just did on the iPhone XS and 10s, sorry, 10s, yes. And I want to not be able to see the quarter inch on the right side, but just part of it, just 2/3 of it. Like nobody has ever said that. And as that notch gets smaller, as it will next year, and then is removed as it will 2 years after that, based on Apple's typical way of doing things, they will get a standing ovation for getting rid of the notch. And we will look back on this time as the stupidest thing in the world. It will be like the fins on cars in the 50s. We don't know why this happened. It got weird. We course corrected. It's over. This is not something that lasts. We're not going to be talking about this down the road other than to laugh at it. It's like when you see all the smoking in movies and you're like, you believe we were like this? People defending this is nonsense. It's just delusional. If you want to put up with it for now because you like the full screen effect or whatever, and you can kind of deal with it, that's fine. Don't start promoting it like it's a plus. It's literally something that gets in the way. It doesn't make any sense. It's unnecessary. I just don't. And the Apple one, like I said, they here. Let me. You must have seen this, right? Let me show you. This is unbelievable. See, let's see if I can do this in a way. Yeah. Okay. See how there's like a black space sky in the background there?
Sure. Yeah.
Right. See it? You see it? If it turns
on. I see nothing. I see black.
It's black. I see nothing now. Oh, I'm clicking on the right thing.
Yeah.
They specifically designed this default wallpaper so that you can't see the notch at the top of that screen. That's why why this wallpaper exists. That's everything you need to know about the notch. Because when you actually put it on a screen where you can see the app, then you can see how big it is. It's
So
humongous.
why? I mean,
I
listen.
don't know.
I've heard the argument
I don't know.
as to why it's there and it's okay, but why follow through other companies? Why are these other companies going down that route when they don't have to?
Well, this is because this is the most bald-faced example of Apple's influence in the world, and the fact that the Android ecosystem as a whole can't stop tripping over themselves to copy everything Apple does, no matter how freaking stupid it is, including OnePlus, unfortunately, whose next phone is now not going to have a headphone jack. I have a huge problem with that. There are some advantages of Android phones with notches over Apple's designs. Apple talks about how this thing is all screen. It's not. It has humongous bezels on every side. That screen does not go to the edge of the device. There is a bezel all the way around it. There are Android phone makers that do a much better job of that, including Samsung, who has those beautiful curved sides. So the way that I mean, Apple's great, I used to say Apple's greatest achievement was getting us to pay more for smartphones, was something I used to say. Honestly, these days, they could throw out any baloney and like the whole entire Android market would copy it immediately. They should release a phone as a joke just to see what they can get away with. What could we force the Android community to do en masse? I don't know. So the OnePlus 6, like I said, has a smaller notch, which I appreciate. The 6T will have a tiny, like little triangular kind of, I think they're calling it a teardrop notch. It's a little bit like the Essential PH1, which has a very small notch. To me, that's acceptable, right? We're moving in steps toward a future where the camera and the sensors can be built behind the screen, and you won't have to worry about notches. There will be no reason to occlude the display anymore. This will happen. It will happen. There's no doubt about it. It's happening. And this is our transition period. It's infuriating. I don't. Well, no, it's not infuriating. I don't mind that it's happening. I mind this kind of mentality. Like if Apple did it, it must be. It's fine. I like anything they do. It's fine. I don't see it anymore.
Something
Sure you don't.
I want to kind of touch on this because I find it interesting, and we're not seeing too much written about this. But and here it starts. Here's a pop-up on CNET that's blaring in my ear right now because it's autoplaying. I thought we were going to block these autoplays. What happened?
So, are you using Chrome?
Yep.
I didn't know if you knew this. I don't know if you know this, I should say. But this to me was a little bit of an epiphany when someone pointed it out to me. If you go and click on the site badge in the left of the address bar, you'll see a little pop down will come down. And if it's on a page that has autoplay video, you'll see an option for audio, and you can turn it off on that site.
Okay.
So Google is doing some based on your previous history. They're either playing or not playing video on certain sites. In other cases, if they understand it to be annoying, it's a nonsense site and it's just going to be annoying, they'll just turn it off. The audio, not the video yet, but you can actually turn it off on a site-by-site basis. In the case of CNET, you probably did watch a video there once by mistake or whatever, and that's why it's playing. Or at least the audio. That's why the audio is playing, but you can turn that off.
So I'm looking at. This thing rattled my brain. Yeah. So something interesting that I want to touch on before we wrap it up is that it's the whole 5G movement that's coming next year with in-home internet.
Right.
And I'm surprised that we're not seeing more about this. And this is a major development over the last couple of years. Obviously, they've been with 4G. When 4G started getting deployed, we started discussing how it's going to be in the homes and it's going to change. Everyone don't need to run these lines anymore. But it never happened with 4G. They were still capping you. We were still, unlimited wasn't really unlimited. But now Verizon and T-Mobile are getting ready to deploy service. Verizon is deploying October 1st for the 5G service in certain markets. And it seems quite affordable. And they are encouraging you to do streaming with it, to watch your movies, watch your YouTube, all this stuff that they were kind of not sure about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of this? Do you think this is going to work?
I was like, do you have a question, Andrew?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And when I talked to Qualcomm about this, they make this really compelling case. I don't think people understand the impact that 5G is going to have. And I think part of the reason they don't is there's this just a segment of people like you don't understand it. Where I live, the connectivity is terrible, or I only have I have this not slow moving kind of. I gotta remove my cat. I'm sorry. Slow moving. Just doesn't get the message. A slow moving cable, DSL, whatever it is. I don't have fiber where I live, and I live out in a rural area and blah blah blah. There's all these. This will never work because of that stuff, because stuff didn't work in the past. 5G is really fast, and 5G is going to be really pervasive. And the way that Qualcomm described it was the world changes dramatically when accessing a file in the cloud is faster than accessing it on the storage of your device. And this is going to change everything. And yes, I'm sure there are going to be areas of rural Emmaus where I live, or rural Idaho or rural Iowa or whatever, where maybe this isn't going to happen in 2019. Maybe it doesn't happen for a long time, or I don't know. I understand that. But for much of the world, when this happens, it's going to be a game changer. And the trick to it is going to be cost. And, we'll have to see. So we've kind of gone up and down on whether unlimited plans exist and what happens and yada, yada, yada. But I just noticed this morning I got an alert from Project Fi that I somehow managed to use like a gigabyte of data yesterday. Right? I just said a gigabyte of data. I looked at the schedule. I was like, how did what did I do? And it all happened yesterday. Now, yesterday was the day I flew home from Florida, and I drove, and it was horrific traffic. So this hour and 15-minute drive turned into like an hour and 45 minutes. And I usually listen to things like podcasts and audiobooks and stuff, but I wanted to listen to music because I was really tired, and I just wanted to kind of turn it up a little bit, and I played music. Well, it turns out on the phone I used, I don't have any of that stuff downloaded. So, and I've chosen the high quality streaming option. I streamed over a gig or almost a gigabyte of music yesterday somehow. And yikes, right? I mean, that's $10, right? That's what that cost. That was about $10. Yeah. So we need to get through that stuff, but this has the potential just to kind of replace everything, right? All the stuff we do, like we're in a house, we have some cable modem or whatever it is, and we want to get it out to some far corner of the house. And you could wire your house for Ethernet, which is expensive and invasive. There's power line networking and obviously Wi-Fi and mesh Wi-Fi networks and blah, blah, all this stuff. I mean, 5G is going to be the start, I think, of getting rid of all the other stuff, in many cases in homes, certainly. Just in the same way that the smartphone era has kind of removed the need for landlines from most people's lives. I know they still exist, but for the most part, gone. I think 5G is going to have that same effect for data.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a
big deal.
I think it's a huge deal. I think the 5G thing is it's not going to make I think when it comes to our cellular device, our cell phones, obviously right now I'm getting 150 megabits a second on my cell phone. That's tremendous.
Yeah.
With 4G.
Yeah.
5G is going to the impact of 5G is going to be in the home more than anything else.
Well, it's going to be everywhere. I mean, it's going to be everywhere, but yes, for sure.
But it's going to be a new strategy as far as fighting against the cable companies. Most people don't care if there's a wire or not in their house.
Most people would gleefully give up their cable provider if a better option existed in a heartbeat. So we'll see. I mean, I get it. I'm sure we'll be a wash in radiation, and there'll be all kinds of concerns, but I don't know. When you look at LTE, something like LTE, and there's different categories of LTE. There's numerous different categories, and they all have different speed characteristics. We talk about gigabit LTE and so forth. When we get past that, we get into an era where we're sort of talking about instantaneous, right? And I think that's where it gets really interesting, because the ability to download a movie to your phone or something in 5 minutes instead of 15 minutes or something is amazing. It's amazing. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But if you can just have the thing on your device suddenly, if this is literally pervasive and it kind of, you stop thinking about even having to have it on your device, it's going to change things, So we'll see. I mean, there's all kinds of different companies involved that tends to screw things up. It will roll out in stages on different carriers in different places around the world. There'll be certain places that are awesome for it and some that are not, especially in the beginning. The goal is we're going to be as wired or as wireless as Singapore is on a planetary scale level, and that would be amazing. But I guess, how do we get from there to when does then become now? I don't know, but I really do. This is a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah. All right, Paul, let's wrap it up. I got to run around today. I got a lot of stuff going on. Next week, you're here in New York, next Tuesday.
Actually, Monday and Tuesday. I misspoke.
Monday and Tuesday.
You might see me Monday night.
So, okay, I'll see you every night. I want to see you every single night that you're there. I'll see you next week, obviously, and then we'll do the show on Thursday.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's it, guys. I'm going to get back to work, and Paul's going to get back to doing whatever you were doing. What were you doing before this? Was there something going on?
It is work. It's work.
Okay. And we'll see you next week, guys.
I also work, Andrew.
See you next week.